Once, meeting a match set up by a friend, he froze upon seeing her. Hearing her name, he couldn't help but recall she was his first love. He wanted to confirm if it was truly her. 10 years ago, he was getting off a bus when the driver mistook him as being with a sleeping girl. He insisted he help the girl off the bus. Helplessly, he went to wake her up. Seeing the girl fast asleep, he grabbed her school bag. Startled, the girl realized they had arrived at school. Panicked, she rushed to get off, assuming the boy wasn't leaving. Still groggy, she stepped off the bus and was startled to see a teacher catching latecomers. Unsure what to do, she saw the boy had hurt his foot. Without thinking, she moved closer and carried him. She pretended she was helping the injured boy to explain being late, but the teacher caught them. Despite their rocky first meeting, their bond grew stronger. However, in the present day, he realized his match wasn't her, but someone else. Seeing his first love again after years, he couldn't stop his heart from racing. Later, he chased after her when she left the coffee shop, but she was gone. Through a rear-view mirror, she noticed him running after her. Both matchmaking attempts ended unsuccessfully. At a red light, he spotted her waiting for a bus. As he called her name, the light turned green, and he turned his car around. But she was gone. In his rear-view mirror, he saw her eating grilled fish at a nearby stall. He joined her, ordered the same dish, and awkwardly asked her to prepare one for him. With no one else around, she reluctantly helped. Hongju learned that Young had only returned temporarily because of work, not as part of his usual routine. Two of them started chatting, realizing they still recognized each other after all these years. Both remarked how the other hadn't changed since high school. Hearing about their old classmates, Hongju asked for Haoyin's contact information. When she retrieved her phone, Haoyin held on to it, teasing her playfully, recalling the carefree moments of their youth. At home, he stared at his phone, hoping for a message from Hongju. Young still awaited her message, holding on to the extra 500 he was given earlier. Meanwhile, Hongju excitedly told her best friend about seeing Young again. Hearing that he hadn't changed much, her friend was surprised and bombarded her with questions about him, including whether he was married. Their conversation brought back memories of 10 years ago, when Young, the top student, had secretly liked Hongju, but she never noticed. Her best friend, however, had a huge crush on him. At that time, Hongju decided to support her friend and even wrote a confession letter for her. When she saw Young, she tried to signal her friend to come over, but her friend felt too shy. The two of them went upstairs together to help her friend confess her feelings. The shy best friend couldn't muster the courage to confess, so she decided to have Hongju deliver the love letter on her behalf. At first, Hongju refused, insisting that confessions should be made in person. However, after her friend pleaded and emphasized that it was for the sake of love, Hongju reluctantly agreed. When Hongju handed the letter to Young, he misunderstood and thought it was from her. Overjoyed, he accepted it immediately, only to feel crushed when Hongju clarified that she was delivering it on her friend's behalf, forcing her to run off. Later, Young kept waiting for Hongju to contact him, but the call he finally received turned out to be from her best friend. Disappointed again, he answered her friend's eager questions about his relationship status and marriage plans. During the call, Young heard Hongju's voice in the background. Just as he was about to speak to her, the call was abruptly ended by her friend. On the day of the planned meeting, Hongju's friend arrived early at the restaurant, dressed up and wearing heels, excited to see Young. However, when Young arrived, he couldn't stop glancing at the door, hoping to see Hongju instead. Meanwhile, Hongju was distracted by a poster about her first love and received a sudden message asking her to deliver another item. Young, still watching the door, grew increasingly restless. Hongju finished her errand and planned to return, but a producer stopped her to discuss something. Back at the restaurant, Hongju drunk too much and had to be escorted home. Young secretly followed her, ensuring her safety from a distance. As she walked, Hongju instinctively slowed down and retreated. Young seized the chance to talk to her, wanting to clear up past misunderstandings. But before he could, Hongju suddenly dashed toward the school gates. There, she formally welcomed him back, finally confronting the emotions she had suppressed for so long. Later that night, Hongju, slightly drunk, accidentally showed up at Young's house. Hu Yong later learned from his uncle that he actually knew Hong Ju. Hu Yong asked his uncle how well he knew her and even borrowed his phone to contact her. On the other side, Hong Ju woke up to a chaotic room, vowing never to drink again. She heard her ex-boyfriend's voice in her head, recalling a dinner where they had unexpectedly crossed paths with Hu Yong. As she thought about Hu Yong's promise to meet her again in the morning, there was a knock at the door. Opening it cautiously, she found her best friend, who had brought along some potato rib soup. They ate together, and the friend, curious, asked where Hong Ju had been drinking last night. Upon learning that her ex-boyfriend had been involved, the friend teased her, calling her ex's favorite. Eventually, Hu Yong's uncle called Hong Ju, asking if she was free the next day. Curious, he asked whether she had recently met with someone for matchmaking. Before the conversation could continue, Hu Yong snatched the phone and directly asked his uncle to stop beating around the bush. The uncle then suggested that Hong Ju take his nephew out the next day. Assuming it was a girl Hu Yong liked, Hong Ju immediately agreed. The story continues with Hu Yong discovering an old photo of Hong Ju as a child. Hong Ju's uncle suggested she bring her best friend along for the outing, but her friend declined, as she had already made plans to meet Hu Yong herself. The next morning, Hu Yong prepared eagerly for the outing. When Hong Ju arrived, she was startled to find out that Hu Yong was the nephew her uncle had been talking about. Seeing the photo confirmed it for her. Although Hong Ju initially wanted Hu Yong to enjoy the day on his own, Hu Yong insisted she join him. Meanwhile, Hong Ju's best friend was trying to contact her but got sidetracked when her father asked her to join a hiking trip. Oblivious to this, Hong Ju and Hu Yong spent the day at an amusement park, enjoying every ride. They tried to call the best friend but couldn't get through, so the two went on to eat spicy chicken noodles. Knowing Hong Ju couldn't handle spicy food, Hu Yong challenged her to a race, where the loser had to grant the winner a wish. One bite in, Hu Yong was overwhelmed by the spiciness and lost miserably. Next, Hong Ju took Hu Yong to a costume rental shop, dressing him in an historical outfit. As they walked, Hu Yong became her personal photographer. Returning to take more photos, Hong Ju showed Hu Yong some photography tips, and even though she stumbled while posing, the resulting picture surprisingly made Hu Yong look dashing. Just as Hong Ju prepared to take Hu Yong to the highlight of the day, a dinner of fried chicken by the Han River, it began to rain heavily. They took shelter in a car, where Hong Ju admired the photos from the day. She accidentally hit the window control, lowering it, and Hu Yong quickly helped her close it. For a brief moment, their eyes met, leaving both of them a little shaken. Later that night, Hu Yong couldn't stop thinking about the car ride and how he had nervously invited Hong Ju to eat fried chicken again. At home, Hong Ju reflected on the day, initially assuming Hu Yong only saw her as a friend's messenger. However, in Hu Yong's mind, every time Hong Ju delivered a love letter from her friend, he secretly felt a flutter of joy because it meant seeing her again. Hong Ju at her workplace. Early in the morning, she is summoned by a representative to the office. Introducing herself as Hong Ju, she discovers that her ex-boyfriend, who left her heartbroken 3 years ago to pursue inspiration abroad, has returned, seeking her help with his novel. Hong Ju recalls how he left without looking back, despite her tearful pleas to stay. Now, his sudden reappearance only brings bitterness. As the ex-boyfriend tries to justify his past actions, claiming he left to find inspiration, Hong Ju makes it clear that she has moved on. Meanwhile, Hu Yong, who happens to be dining nearby, witnesses this interaction from a distance. When he realizes the man is Hong Ju's ex-boyfriend, he doesn't hesitate. Stepping in confidently, Hu Yong takes Hong Ju's hand, asserting that they were on a date just the night before. Her ex, defeated, has no choice but to leave. When Hu Yong finally gets to hold Hong Ju's hand, as he helps her escape from her persistent ex-boyfriend. This small act of courage rekindles his long-held affection for her, as he resolves not to let go this time. Hong Ju, however, steals glances at her ex walking away, leaving Hu Yong wondering if her heart is still tied to the past. Back at the company, Hu Yong is visibly excited from the hand-holding moment, his mind racing with possibilities. The uncle, oblivious to Hu Yong's feelings, hands him coffee, breaking the daydream. A flashback reveals Hu Yong's first encounter with Hongju at a university event. As Hu Yong prepared to accept an award at Seoul National University, he stumbled upon a lost and found wall featuring a picture of Hongju. Coincidentally, a bag flew toward Hu Yong, followed by Hongju emerging from the bushes, hurriedly retrieving it while warning him not to mention seeing her. Later, Hu Yong secretly follows Hongju onto a train, watching her from a distance as she travels to an unfamiliar town. He buys a ticket to follow her, his emotions a mix of excitement and nervousness. However, Hongju, always unpredictable, buys a return ticket to Seoul instead, leading to yet another chance encounter at the station. After Hu Yong insists on following Hongju, they end up at a military base where Hongju is determined to meet someone and confess her feelings. Despite Hu Yong's attempts to stop her, she is unwavering, stating she must confess or she'll regret it forever. Hu Yong, torn between jealousy and concern, supports her decision while secretly hoping she'll change her mind. When Hongju learns the person she's looking for is unavailable for 6 months, her disappointment is obvious. She drops the gift she brought, and Hu Yong gently picks it up. They miss the last bus as Hongju twists her ankle while trying to run. Hu Yong's uncle just discovered that Hongju was Hu Yong's first love. He realized the reason Hu Yong wanted to stay for a week was to spend time with Hongju. Curious about what would happen if he liked Hongju even more, he began to worry. Distracted all day, he finally sorted out their relationship on his tablet and decided to find Hongju. Hongju was unsure whether to accept a job offer to adapt her ex-boyfriend's work. To her surprise, Hu Yong appeared right in front of her. She wanted to say hello, but, recalling what had happened earlier, decided to pretend not to notice him. Suddenly, Hu Yong stopped in his tracks, and Hongju tried to leave, but was spotted by Hu Yong, and they ended up heading home together. Hongju grew curious about Hu Yong's past, but still hadn't decided if she wanted to talk to him before he left. While walking, they passed a fried chicken shop, and Hongju invited Hu Yong to eat together. However, she also called her best friend, who quickly realized Hu Yong was her uncle's nephew and believed they were fated to meet. Curious, the friend asked where they had met, but Hu Yong revealed he had planned to pretend not to see Hongju earlier, even though she had saved him during the day. To avoid misunderstandings, Hongju kicked Hu Yong. The mood shifted awkwardly, and her friend tried to lighten things up with beer, but Hongju refused and left, leaving the two of them at the fried chicken shop. The friend noticed Hu Yong's feelings for Hongju and wondered if he was aware of them. Suddenly, she got a call from Hongju, saying she had left first. Hongju wandered to her friend's shop alone. Meanwhile, Hu Yong apologized to the friend, who was understanding and wanted to know if he had come back specifically for Hongju. Hu Yong returned home. His mind was filled with thoughts of her best friend, uncle, and Hongju's words. However, her mother kept urging her to return. Hongju arrived at the door, thinking about making a call, but hesitated, remembering it was someone her best friend liked. The next morning, she rushed out to meet the representative and agreed to adapt her ex-boyfriend's novel. Meanwhile, Hu Yong, after a sleepless night, decided to leave. On his way out, he learned that Hongju had been in a car accident. Even now, Hongju seemed to want to push him away. Hu Yong felt conflicted, suspecting that he wasn't welcome, but unwilling to accept it. He was frustrated that she kept hiding her true feelings from him. Suddenly, Hu Yong asked her to confront the pain she was feeling. Before things could escalate, a doctor interrupted to begin her examination. To avoid Hu Yong discovering anything personal, Hongju asked the doctor to wait until Hu Yong had left. Hu Yong, left alone, paced the hallway, confused about his actions and their conversation. One moment, he was impulsive. The next, he was trying to restrain himself. Hongju felt overwhelmed, as though she was losing control of her emotions. Her best friend took time off to visit her, but just then, the gym teacher suddenly drove up. Hu Yong's uncle also arrived at the hospital and insisted that Hu Yong leave. When the best friend got out of the car, she nearly twisted her ankle, but the gym teacher kindly caught her and even brought flat shoes for her to wear. As they entered the lobby, they saw Hu Yong and Hongju. Uncle gathered his belongings while the best friend noticed Hu Ying's feelings for Hongju and suggested they all talk together. In the elevator, Hongju kept recommending her best friend to Hu Yong, but just as Hu Yong was about to confess he had no feelings for her, the elevator became crowded. Hongju was pushed closer to Hu Yong, which made him feel drawn to her again. When they reached the lobby, she asked Hu Yong to restrain himself, worried that he was causing unnecessary misunderstandings. When they finally met up with the best friend, Hongju continued trying to set them up. However, the best friend revealed that she already had a boyfriend. In an effort to create an opportunity for the two, their friends directly left them behind on the platform. Reluctantly, Hongju got into Hu Yong's car. When they arrived downstairs at her home, she refused Hu Yong's help and insisted on going up by herself. However, she nearly fell, and, after steadying herself, still pushed Hu Yong away. To express her gratitude, she decided to repay him with fried chicken rolls. As they went upstairs, Hongju accidentally twisted her ankle again, and Hu Yong reacted quickly to support her before she fell. He ended up taking her to his home to rest. Despite everything, Hongju still used 3 fried chicken rolls as a way to thank him. Hu Yong, concerned for her well-being, offered to buy her medicine. While taking out the card with the address, it accidentally fell to the ground, causing an awkward moment. Hongju reassured him, saying, "I'm fine. I can handle it myself." However, Hu Yong gently insisted she rest. Suddenly, Hongju was startled awake by Hu Yong asking what she wanted for dinner. Without waiting for a response, he sat down beside her, seemingly trying to start a conversation, but also leaving her unsure of his intentions. Hongju attempted to escape back to her home, even deciding to crawl up the stairs if necessary. However, on her way, she bumped into Hu Yong, who was returning. Without hesitation, Hu Yong picked her up and carried her upstairs. Afterward, he retrieved the medicine and firmly instructed her to take it and rest well. Hongju thanked Hu Yong and began to realize how kind he had been to her. She started questioning if her memory of him from school was mistaken. She thought they were merely classmates and had nothing special between them, but now she felt unsure. Hu Yong suggested she contact her friends while cleaning up the space. Hongju, however, was conflicted. She recalled Hu Yong carrying her upstairs and felt it was crossing a boundary, though she also knew her dreams and feelings were becoming increasingly confusing. While Hu Yong tidied up, he couldn't help but remember Hongju's words about them being just classmates. At that moment, Hu Yong received a call from a mutual friend, initially saying he'd return soon, but then deciding not to. The next morning, Hongju woke up to find her friends discussing her and Hu Yong. She brushed it off, saying she had only eaten congee the day before and felt perfectly fine. However, she then noticed Hu Yong had joined the group chat. Shortly after, he invited her downstairs for breakfast. When she offered to help, he politely declined. After taking a bite, Hongju was very satisfied. Hu Yong, it turned out, had gotten the recipe from one of her friends. Another suggestion from her best friend. Hongju tried it and was once again pleased. Just as she was preparing to leave, Hu Yong finally mentioned a certain 5% matter. Hongju's best friend reveals to Hu Yong that Hongju's reluctance to engage in relationships isn't because Hu Yong is her first love. Instead, it's due to her terrible experience with a past boyfriend who left without a word, leaving her to endure the worst breakup imaginable. This traumatic event made her averse to love. However, Hu Yong passed the best friend's test of suitability and seemed curious if he had confessed his feelings yet. Hongju eventually returned home, but her ex-boyfriend suddenly showed up. Seeing her with Hu Yong, he attempted to manipulate her by proposing a professional collaboration. However, Hongju directly confronted him, firmly rejecting his attempts and making it clear that he would never change. Although the confrontation caused her emotional pain, she managed to stand her ground, forcing the ex-boyfriend to leave. Afterward, Hu Yong comforted Hongju, encouraging her to heal both physically and emotionally. This declaration brought the two closer together. But just as things seemed to be moving forward, Hongju's phone vibrated, snapping her out of the moment. She pushed Hu Yong away, avoiding further intimacy. Despite this, her friends didn't give up on trying to bring the two closer. When Hongju learned Hu Yong would join their outing, she panicked and left in a hurry, avoiding confrontation. Hu Yong arrived only to find her gone. Her best friend suspected either a fight or unspoken feelings between the two and decided to help them reconcile. Hongju, meanwhile, found herself at a bus stop, haunted by memories of her breakup from 10 years ago. especially when she received a text from her ex-boyfriend. She tried to calm herself the next day, but her friends insisted she join a group outing. Although she initially declined, using her injured foot as an excuse, she eventually gave in and joined them. On the journey, her uncle mischievously arranged the seating to force Hongju and Hu Yang closer together. During a stop at a rest area, her uncle and friends conspired to leave them alone. Hu Yang took the opportunity to offer Hongju a cane to ease her discomfort. However, she brushed off the gesture, stating that what happened between them the previous day should be forgotten, and they were just friends. Hongju, unable to understand why Hu Yang keeps expressing his feelings for her. She dreams about being abandoned again, first by her childhood love, then by Hu Yang. She awakens in a panic, only to realize Hu Yang and the others have left for an outing, leaving her behind. When she finds Hu Yang has thoughtfully looked after her, sparking memories of her unsettling dream. Hongju finally accepts her feelings for Hu Yang, and they embrace their self and share a beautiful moment together. The group arrives at a seaside guest house. While others head out to fish, Hu Yang stays behind to prepare ingredients. Hongju eventually joins him, but awkward tension persists. Later, as the group fishes, Hongju tries to avoid Hu Yang by pairing up with others. Despite this, Hu Yang impresses everyone with his fishing skills, winning admiration. While the tide starts to rise, Hongju becomes captivated by a rope floating in the water. Ignoring the danger, she tries to grab it but nearly falls in. Hu Yang rushes to her rescue and manages to pull her back just in time. Hongju insists he retrieve the rope, which turns out to be entangled with a fishing net. Although reluctant, Hu Yang complies and hauls the rope out, much to Hongju's delight. Together, they discover the rope has caught several fish, filling their bucket quickly. This small moment brings them closer. As Hongju and Hu Yang continue their seaside adventure, they finally find the elusive 8-turn fish they had been searching for. Hongju attempts to pull it out but struggles, prompting Hu Yang to assist. Their combined effort results in an unexpected tumble, leaving them awkwardly close on the ground. The tension rises as both feel their hearts race, but Hongju quickly tries to recover, nervously brushing off the moment. The pair soon realize that the hat they were using to store the fish has disappeared, prompting mild panic. Hongju hurriedly retreats to the guest house, sensing the atmosphere has shifted upon their return. Her best friend appears to be acting strange, and it's revealed that the friend has been pretending to date the gym teacher. Hu Yang and Hongju begin to bond further after the meal, seemingly moving closer to becoming a couple. Meanwhile, Hongju's ex-boyfriend makes his exit. As Hongju leaves the guest house, a woman spots Hongju and instantly recognizes her as the girl her son has been fond of. Later, Hu Yang surprises Hongju by asking her out for dinner, but she hesitates. But their moment is interrupted when Hongju's uncle stumbles in, creating a comedic diversion. That night, the day takes a humorous turn when Hongju arrives with her drunken uncle, prompting Hu Yang to step in and help. The uncle reveals Hu Yang's strained family relationships, particularly his avoidance of his mother. Frustrated, Hu Yang drops the uncle on the ground. Hu Yang drags Hongju outside. Hongju, reminded of something she just worked on, checks to see if everything is still intact, while Hu Yang jokingly claims she styled her hair just to impress him. Ready for their upcoming date, Hongju and Hu Yang makes preparation, using half of the day selecting dress. When they meet, they discover Hongju's best friend is tagging along. At a cafe, Hu Yang and Hongju can't seem to let go of each other's hands, while the best friend gets annoyed over not receiving a text from the sports teacher. Hu Yang suggests confronting him directly, and after some convincing, Hongju agrees to help. The group decides to visit the sports teacher, with Hongju lending her friend a change of clothes. As Hongju finishes changing, Hu Yang sneaks glances at her, and she teasingly asks what he likes about her. Hu Yang avoids the question, admitting he has no idea why or when he started liking her, but recalls how hearing her call his name always made his heart race. Their tender moment is interrupted by a call from Hongju's uncle, ending the date prematurely. Hu Yang promises to meet Hongju every evening. Back at home, Hongju digs out an old box from under her bed, revealing a career plan she once shared with Hu Yang. It hints that she, too, had feelings for him back then. The next morning, Hongju visits Hu Yong's place, hoping to head to work together, only to find him missing. He calls her, reminding her of their promise, but she learns he's at the office with his mother. When Hongju arrives at work, Hu Yong's mother disapproves of the environment, calling it too small. Meanwhile, Hongju's ex-boyfriend tries to win her back by leaving behind a screenplay he claims was inspired by her. Meanwhile, Hu Yong's mother decides not to return home just yet. On the other side, Hongju feels conflicted about leaving, as her ex-boyfriend tries to convince her to stay a little longer. He pauses, intending to let her go first. He suddenly collapsed and confessed that he had been sick, explaining why he had left her. He reveals that his illness prevented him from breathing properly, and his hands shook so badly he couldn't write. He didn't want Hongju to see him in such a state, and as she left, tears in his eyes, he felt heartbroken. Hongju helps him to his feet and offers him a drink. When she tries to leave, he grabs her hand, begging her to stay. Hongju reassures him that she'll stay in touch and asks him to rest. As she walks away, she questions why he left and reflects on the past 3 years, wondering what went wrong and whether it was her fault. When she learns the truth, she's angry. Angry because no matter what she did, he was always going to leave. She tells him she's met someone else, someone she's falling more in love with before leaving his house. Meanwhile, Hu Yong, hearing that his mother insists on staying, decides to act on his own, rebelling by leaving to do what he feels is right. Hongju, now ready to let go of her past, she returns her former planning proposal to her representative and throws it away. Walking alone to a convenience store, she meets Hu Yong. Without hesitation, she runs into his arms, tightly embracing him, signaling the beginning of their new chapter together. Today, Hu Yong is determined to do what he wants. When they return home, Hongju throws out all the materials related to her ex-boyfriend, including his books. The next morning, Hu Yong heads out for a run. While tying his shoes, he spots the books that Hongju had thrown away. Hongju, leaving the house, notices the books are no longer there. As it turns out, Hu Yong is also heading in the same direction. At that moment, Hu Yong's mother arrives, and, to Hongju's surprise, Hu Yong introduces her as his girlfriend. His mother wants to have a private conversation with Hu Yong, so Hongju is asked to leave. She feels out of place, especially when she learns that Hu Yong's mother will be staying in their secret location. That evening, Hongju tries to be careful not to run into Hu Yong's mother. Later, Hu Yong sneaks Hongju upstairs to avoid being seen by his mother. The next day, Hu Yong goes to see a friend, but they get into an argument when Hu Yong spends too much time chatting with Hongju. At school, Hongju has lunch outside and runs into an old acquaintance who remembers Hu Yong. She confides in her friend that Hu Yong is now her boyfriend, but the friend doesn't believe her. To prove it, Hongju plans to go to her friend's restaurant for some barbecue later that evening. However, when Hongju returns home, she unexpectedly runs into her ex-boyfriend, who has come to her house. He tries to convince her to leave Hu Yong, claiming that he is a notorious womanizer. Hongju is disturbed by this, but brushes it off. In the meantime, Hu Yong's mother, returning home, is hit by one of the paper airplanes, which leads her to discover that Hongju and her ex-boyfriend are still entangled in some way. Hongju then reassures her ex, telling him that while she once thought breaking up would be unbearable, she has moved on and found love again. She believes he can heal and find happiness as well. He leaves, finally letting go of their past relationship. Later, when Hongju retrieves the paper airplanes, she runs into Hu Yong's mother again. The situation with Hu Yong's mother is tense, as she doesn't want her son caught up in a past relationship, which seems to be affecting his present with Hongju. Hu Yong's mother doesn't want her son to get caught up in a complicated 4-year relationship with Hongju. She tells Hongju to stop pursuing him, claiming that Hu Yong is a bad guy who often makes girls cry. She wants Hongju to walk away before she gets hurt too much. Hongju, feeling confused, decides to leave, but she wonders if Hu Yong has ever thought about their relationship and what it might cost him. Hu Yong rushes home and finds Hongju upstairs. He picks up a piece of cloth stained with her blood from the stairs, wanting to understand what happened. Hongju explains that she heard Hu Yong's mother calling him a bad boy and saying she was here to take him away. Hu Yong, feeling guilty, apologizes for not telling his mom about Hongju. The couple argues for the first time, one afraid of losing the other, and the other unsure of how to move forward. The next day, Ho-ying stays at home. Hong-ju waits for Hu-yong by the school gates, thinking back to when Hu-yong confessed his feelings to her, and then reflecting on their argument. Her best friend notices something is wrong and suggests they go out for some good food. Meanwhile, Hu-yong's friend arrives at his house, and as she passes the front door, she can't help but laugh. Hong-ju secretly likes Hu-yong, but she doesn't realize it. Hu-yong knows he made Hong-ju cry, and he waits outside her house, trying to figure out how to make it right. After receiving some advice from her best friend, Hong-ju hurries home, wanting to be with Hu-yong again. When Hu-yong and Hong-ju finally make up, they almost get hit by a car while rushing to each other. They're relieved to reconcile, and Hong-ju finally admits that she likes Hu-yong. He, in turn, confesses that he loves her even more. As they return home, they linger together, hesitant to part. Hong-ju wonders aloud whether they should eat the instant noodles before saying goodbye. Hu-yong rushes in as Hong-ju prepares instant noodles. As they sit down to eat, Hong-ju notices how close Hu-yong is and, flustered, repeatedly insists that she's only offering him noodles. While cooking, Hong-ju hurries away, and they sit down to eat together, with Hong-ju on a cardboard box. She expresses that she doesn't want Hu-yong to give up on the important things in his life because of her. Hu-yong admits that when he's with her, he often sees his own shortcomings. He suggests that after work, they could enjoy noodles together and go to a game center. The two accidentally fall down together, laughing. They share a lighthearted moment. That night, they sit together reading a comic book. Hong-ju remembers a moment from 10 years ago when she was filling out a career plan and was unsure of what to put. She had seen Hu-yong playing basketball and was impressed by his skill. After class, she goes to the library to find him and share a comic book with him. However, when some classmates discuss Hu-yong, Hong-ju is suddenly hit in the face by him, which makes her heart race. Hu-yong quietly confesses that he had only shared his dreams with Hong-ju. The next day, Hong-ju wakes up to find it snowing outside. She hears the doorbell and assumes it's Hu-yong, but to her surprise, it's his mother, who hands her a card. Afterward, Hu-yong returns home to find his mother has already packed his bags. She plans to have one last meal with him before he leaves and tells her about his plans to return to the U.S., which he had started 10 years ago. Hu-yong's mother, despite her own heartbreak over her father, she decides to leave for the U.S. and asks Hong-ju to meet her there in 10 days. However, her plans are interrupted as she wants Hong-ju to come along, but she doesn't have the time to arrange a ticket. Instead, she gives Hong-ju a card. When Hu-yong is ready to send his mother off, he discovers that she has already spoken to Hong-ju, but Hong-ju is missing. He searches everywhere for her, only to find her later lying on the ground at her doorstep, exhausted. The next day, Hu-yong and Hong-ju go to school together. Hong-ju wishes they could have spent more time earlier, but Hu-yong, holding Hong-ju's hand, expresses his wish for them to stay together. Hong-ju confesses her love for Hu-yong and how she doesn't want to be apart from him. Hu-yong, aware of how precious everything is to Hong-ju, takes out the novel she had discarded and reaffirms her dreams, promising that he'll return and never let her go. Together, they visit a local shop to show the owner they are truly together. Back home, they decorate for Christmas, take a picture together, and watch cartoons. Hu-yong prepares to leave for the U.S., and Hong-ju decides not to go. She talks to her friend, who suggests Hong-ju should move on from Hu-yong. When the farewell party arrives, Hong-ju doesn't attend, telling Hu-yong she needs to work late. However, Hu-yong tries to contact her, but she doesn't see the calls due to being busy. The next day, Hong-ju's friend and uncle accompany Hu-yong to the airport, where Hong-ju, hiding her plans, arrives unexpectedly. Determined, she decides to follow Ho-ying to the U.S. The end. Thanks for watching. Please drop a heart if you love the story.